Hi, this is Doug Reeves at Creative Leadership Solutions, where we believe in evidence, passion, and results. Today, I'd like to address one of the most emotional topics in education, and that is grading. Now, before you turn off the screen, let me offer some reassurances. What gets people into trouble is when they take radical approaches to grading, or when parent groups get on the internet and hear crazy things that have been written and said about grading, and they come to your next board meeting with pitchforks. So let's dial back the tension a little bit and talk about how to have a constructive conversation, including talking to parents first. If you're ever kind enough to invite me to your school, I ask to come the evening before and meet with parents and community members, or if, depending on the community, get up early in the morning and have a 6:30 breakfast with them, because they need to hear what doesn't change. When parents hear grading reform, they're worried that their kids are going to lose transcripts, they'll lose letter grades, they can't get scholarships, they can't get into college. So here, my friends, is rule number one of change. Talk about what does not change. So we raise our right hands and say, parents, community members, we'll still have letter grades, A, B, C, D, F. We will still have transcripts so your kids can get scholarships and get into college. We'll still have IEPs. We'll still have academic honors, though my preference is that you go to the Ivy League system of highest honors, high honors, and honors, where you can have an objective way of who's distinguished, highest honors, high honors, and honors, rather than pretending that the 3.99995 is different from the 3.99994. But I digress. We'll still have academic honors that parents want. We'll still have letter grades. We'll still have transcripts, all the things that they cling to. What we can do with grading reform is make these things a lot more accurate, but continue to reassure them we're on the same side. We want a grading system, indeed an educational system, that rewards students actually for what they do, not what their parents do, not what their parents fail to do, but really focuses on what the students do. We want them to be rewarded for their actual level of proficiency, not paperwork game playing. In other words, what would happen in the real world? When I hear people say, well, in the real world, you don't see grading reform, actually, in the real world, you do. What you never see in the real world is the game playing over who's valedictorian and who's salutatorian down to 1/100th of one decimal point, as we see now. And we also don't see in the real world paperwork substituting for actual proficiency. And you and I want student success and failure to reflect their actual work. So, what are some things that we can do that will really reduce people's blood pressure and still make effective change happen? Number one, maintain traditional A, B, C, D, F grading. I think people who are telling you change to 1, 2, 3, 4 are creating an argument that you don't need to have. Stay with what your culture approves of, A, B, C, D, F. But make it accurate. In the old-fashioned days, A was a 4, B was a 3, C was a 2, D was a 1, F is a 0. If we can stay with that, then students who don't turn work in can still get a 0, but it's an accurate 0 on a 4-point scale, not the 100-point scale. Secondly, stop using the average. The average is something that our technology companies helpfully have your computerized grading systems default to, but that's never the real world in the job market. In fact, in the real world, we expect people to get feedback, improve it, get feedback, improve it, get feedback, improve it, and then they're evaluated on that final lab, that final brief submitted to the court, that final treatment of the patient, not all the things that happened before. We expect them to get feedback on an experimental basis and use that feedback to get better. Think about it in your own school. When you send kids to the state track meet, is that based on the average of their performance during the year or based on who's running fastest at the end of the season? When you applaud for those spring concerts, do you refuse to applaud because, after all, those kids sounded pretty rotten back at the beginning of the year? Or do you recognize that through practice, through feedback, through hard work, they got better, and then, yes, you applauded, and rightfully so? So why, friends, would it be okay to hold students accountable and punish them in May for the mistakes that they made in January in an algebra class? So stop using the average. Use plain old A, B, C, D, F, 4, 3, 2, 1 scales. If you could do those two little things, that will dramatically improve your performance. In fact, let me give you some brand new data from just a few weeks ago. Some teachers took a backwards look at 180 students where they had used the 100 to 0 scale, and they just said, if we make these two little changes, going A is a 4, B is a 3, C is a 2, D is a 1, F is a 0, and we use latest and best evidence rather than the average. You want to know what happened? 54 of those 180 students had a full letter grade increase. What would that mean for your school? To have 54 out of 180 avoid failure. Friends, that's 2 sections of electives. That's 2 fewer sections of repeaters. That's better discipline, better morale, better culture, better behavior. It's worthwhile doing. Finally, what are some things we need to do to encourage the faculty before we start grading reform? Too many of these convoluted systems insist that the faculty put all the standards in a row and then all the students down here and evaluate every single standard. That's crazy. There are too many standards. So the first thing you have to do is to separate the power standards, some people say priority standards, from all the others, and just focus on about half a dozen per subject that I will evaluate. Now, that doesn't mean I don't teach the others, I may, but I'm going to focus on assessing and reassessing the most important power standards. That is, those standards that apply in multiple disciplines. For example, argumentative writing you see in English language arts, in science, in social studies. Tables, charts, and graphs you see in math, in science, in social studies. What has leverage? What has endurance? Look not just at your own grade, but all the other grades in the future, and you'll see some of the same standards recur again and again. They endure. And what's most important at the next level? You know, I'll ask 5th grade teachers, why are you trying to cover 45 things? They say, because I got to get them ready for middle school. And I ask the middle school teacher, is that really true? They never say cover every single standard. They say cover a few things that are most important. I'll ask 8th grade teachers, why are you trying to do 65 things? Because I got to get them ready for high school. And then I'll ask high school teachers, is that really true? They never say cover every standard, but a few things that are most important. So leverage, endurance, what's most important for the next level, do your power standards. And then empower the teachers to base the final grade on the latest and best evidence. Stop using a computer-generated average. There's never been a computer, I don't care if it's Watson, that's smarter and has more professional judgment than your teachers do to use the latest and best evidence to establish a final grade. So we can make this happen, but we've got to have a conversation that's rational, clear-headed, and reassuring before we even start the grading conversation. Thanks for listening. At Creative Leadership Solutions, we provide keynotes, workshops, consulting, as well as coaching. And I want to make sure that you let us help you impact student results. Thanks for listening.